Hey guys, Devin here with Admiral Off-Road, and today we're going to be changing out our thermostat. Let's get started. The thermostat is located at the front of the engine, right here where these two hoses come together. It's held on with two half-inch bolts, but before we take all that apart, we're going to have to drain a little bit of the coolant. I'm just going to take off this upper radiator hose here because we don't have to drain everything. We just want to drain anything that's going to come rushing out when we go to take off this housing. I have a couple of buckets underneath here, so when I take off this radiator hose, all the coolant isn't just going to fall on the ground. Now that we've got most of the fluid drained, we can start to take off the housing. That's going to be a half-inch socket. Alright, there's one. And the other one's a little bit harder to get to. It's down underneath here. Alright, there's a little bit more fluid in there to drain. Alright. And there's our second bolt. Now that we got those two taken off, we can go and remove this housing, bring it up here, and you can see our thermostat. Now that we've got the housing out of the way, we can go ahead and remove the thermostat. And again, make sure you got a bucket under there to catch it. And that's our thermostat, our old one. Before we install our new thermostat, let's take a look at the old one and the new one side by side. This is the old thermostat, and this one is the new one. Now, the problem with the old one, and the reason why I'm replacing it is, if you look through here, you can see all the way through it right now. You can see the table through that little hole there. And that means that this thermostat is open right now. If we take a look at this one, you can't see the table through it. It's closed. Now, these thermostats aren't supposed to open until they reach a certain temperature. This one got stuck in the open position, so it's always allowing coolant to flow through it, and it's not letting the engine warm up. This one, and the way they're supposed to work, is it's closed right now. Once this reaches its operating temperature, which is 195 degrees for this thermostat, it's going to open up and allow the coolant to flow through it and keep the engine at a constant temperature. When they're open all the time like this, they don't allow the engine to warm up, and it keeps it really, really cold. Now, normally the Jeeps have a problem overheating, and so keeping it cool sounds like a good thing. But when it's too cold and it can't reach its operating temperature, it doesn't run as efficiently. And with this being stuck open, I got really, really bad gas mileage. I went from about 15.5, 16 miles per the gallon to about 13 to 14. So I definitely knew right when it happened, all of a sudden I had a really big fuel mileage drop. So hopefully with this one in place, it'll allow the engine to warm up quicker, and it'll give me that better fuel mileage. Now that we have the old thermostat removed, and before we install our new one, we're going to want to get all of this RTV gasket off. Make sure you don't allow any of this RTV to fall inside of the engine there. I want to keep it all out. Now that we've got our mating surfaces pretty clean, we can install our new thermostat and our gasket. So our thermostat, make sure the way you put it in, it'll fit either way, but you want this pointing part facing out. Then when I go to install the gasket, it's got this big gap here. I want the gap to line up with this hole here. So make sure I get the holes to line up. And the gap right there. I'm going to use just a little bit of RTV to help hold it in place. You don't necessarily have to with this one. It's got a rubber seal on it, but I am just to make it a little bit easier. Just a dab, not a whole lot. Right on the corner there to help hold it in place while I install it. Now we can reinstall our housing. When you reinstall the housing, remember, long bolt goes on top, short bolt goes on the bottom. Make make sure you get them down nice and snug. It doesn't have to be super tight. Now that that's done, we can reattach our upper radiator hose. That's tight. Now we've gotten it all tightened up, let's go ahead and refill our system. Make sure to add it nice and slow because it likes to overflow. When you're refilling your system, make sure to take it slow. There's a lot of air trapped in here right now since we drained a lot of the coolant out. So when you're refilling it, there's going to be some air bubbles coming up. Let all those go, and then you can refill it a couple more times. So make sure you really top it off. And it also helps if you kind of squeeze this upper radiator hose a couple times if you are full, and that'll help get some more of that air out of the system. There are those air bubbles I was talking about. So I'm just right now squeezing the radiator hose so you see the level go up and down a little bit. And I'm just really trying to work all that air out of the system. And now I can add some more. It's also a good idea right now, if your reservoir is low, you can fill up your overflow reservoir as well. Last thing we're going to do before we call this one done, we're going to start up the vehicle and let it run for a second, and that's going to hopefully get rid of all the rest of the air bubbles. Check the coolant level one more time and top it off if we need to. Alright guys, that's going to do it for today. If you have any questions or comments, go ahead and leave them down below. And if you like what you saw here, please like and subscribe. While you're taking off your thermostat, you might as well do a full cooling system flush. If you want to see a video on that, go ahead and click over here. If you want to know how to change your oil pressure sending unit, click over here. If you're watching this on mobile devices or you have your annotations turned off, I'll put a link in the description. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.